The arena fell silent as Kess hit the ground. The Valerian crowd erupted into screams of triumph. They'd come to witness the legendary Deathworlder fighter defeated by their champion, a massive Valerian warrior named Thrax, who'd held the arena title for 7 years. Thrax stood over the fallen girl, his blade raised for the finishing strike. The crowd cheered. Kess was 17 years old. She'd been born on Kereth Prime, a world where the gravity was 1.4 times Earth's, where the air itself contained trace toxins, where the only predators that survived were the ones with bodies capable of tolerating punishment that would liquefy lesser species. She'd lived her entire life in a place where weakness meant death before your second heartbeat. She'd never learned how to stay down. The Valorians didn't see her eyes open. They didn't notice her muscles tense. They were too busy celebrating, too certain of victory, too committed to the narrative they'd constructed, their hero, triumphant. Their enemy, defeated. Kess moved. It wasn't a lunge or a roll. It was something more primal, a full-body explosion of kinetic energy born from a world that had taught her body to ignore pain, ignore fatigue, ignore the screaming signals of catastrophic damage that told normal organisms to surrender. She caught Thrax's sword arm with both hands and twisted with force that dislocated 3 joints simultaneously. The blade fell from his grip. Before Thrax could process what had happened, Kess drove her forehead into his face with enough velocity to fracture his orbital socket. 2 seconds. Thrax staggered backward. Blood poured from his ruined eye. But he was still standing, still dangerous, still massive. He swung his remaining functional arm like a club. Kess ducked inside the arc and drove her elbow into his ribs, precisely calculated impact designed to collapse his secondary respiratory system. The Valerian crowd had stopped cheering. Thrax dropped to one knee, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Kess pressed her attack. She'd studied him for 3 months, watched every fight, memorized his patterns, understood his psychology. Valorians fought like hunters, power, dominance, overwhelming force. But Kess had fought creatures on Kereth Prime that made Thrax look like a sparring dummy. She'd hunted prey that could sense her heartbeat from a kilometer away. She'd survived predators with reflexes that made her seem frozen in time. Thrax was slow. 4 seconds. She broke his arm. Both of them. She dislocated his knee. She drove her fist into his solar plexus with enough force to rupture his primary heart chamber. Thrax fell completely, and Kess stood over him exactly as he'd stood over her moments before. The crowd watched in horror. "Is this not how your games work?" Kess asked, breathing heavily but not from exertion, from the adrenaline flooding her system, from the rage of a species that had learned millennia ago that mercy to an opponent was a death sentence. "You strike down your enemy. You celebrate victory. You assume it's over." She looked directly at the spectator stands. "On my world, nothing is ever over. Nothing ever stops fighting. Nothing ever stays down because staying down means the predators eat you alive." 6 seconds. Kess turned away from Thrax's broken form and walked toward the arena exit. But before she reached the gate, she noticed the security detail rushing toward her, 4 Valerian guards, weapons drawn, responding to the threat of an uncontrolled Deathworlder. "Don't," she said simply. They didn't listen. They'd been trained to protect their champion, to maintain arena order, to control any situation. They approached with tactical precision, coordination, confidence. Kess had survived ice storms on Kereth Prime that froze the atmosphere itself. She'd hunted creatures that could kill you with a thought. 4 guards were not a problem. 16 seconds. The guards fell one after another. Not dead, not quite, but effectively neutralized. Broken limbs, collapsed organs, nervous systems temporarily disrupted. Kess moved with lethal grace, each motion flowing from 3 billion years of evolutionary pressure to survive. When it ended, she stood in the center of the arena, breathing steadily, surrounded by the broken bodies of her enemies. The crowd was silent. Kess looked up at the stands. On Kareth Prime, we have a saying, the most dangerous creature isn't the one that wants to fight. It's the one that wants to stop. She smiled, and for just a moment, the crowd could see something in her eyes that had nothing to do with human psychology. Something that had learned to survive in hell itself.